Hey.
Alright, so I guess I'll be the first one to admit that I might have been a little wrong about the Chicago Bulls, at least so far to start the season. I'll admit, they're a fun team to watch. The defenses look good, the offenses looked good as well. It all looks pretty good. And I will also admit that I have been waiting patiently to give praise to this team just to see that by some off chance it was just a lucky hot start, and that they would continue to get worse as the season went on, but I don't think that's the case. At least I'm starting to lean towards that way of thinking. And I say that because the Bulls had a relatively easy schedule to open up their season, so some of their wins weren't as impressive as other teams' wins, but then we saw them go against the Knicks, who were 3-1 at the time. Bulls were 4-0. Lose on a buzzer beater, great game. Then they start the next game of their really tough stretch where they played the Utah Jazz and they end up winning. And this win also comes after recent news that Patrick Williams, the second-year player for the Chicago Bulls, is going to miss the rest of the season with a wrist injury. Definitely threw some wrenches into Bulls fans' hopes, but again, first game back, and they're still looking pretty good. Now, I think the big thing that many people were interested in, maybe even more than the actual result of this first game without Patrick Williams, was how was Billy Donovan and the rest of the Bulls team going to make do with rotations, which players are going to play, all that good injury replacement stuff. And as we got a sneak peek at in the preseason, it was Javonte Green who ended up getting that start at the 4 spot, filling in for Patrick Williams along with the rest of the starting lineup, the usuals with Ball, DeRozan, LaVine, and Vucevic. From there was 3 other players who got some more extended run as a result of Patrick Williams' minutes going out, and those 3 players were Ayo Dosunmu, Derrick Jones Jr., and Tony Bradley. Now the first 2 make sense because those are 2 other wings. Dosunmu can give you some offensive, capabilities, whereas Derrick Jones Jr. gives you some defensive capabilities at that wing spot. And then Tony Bradley got some more run at the center position when Vucevic was on the bench because, at least to this point in the year, Patrick Williams had been playing some small ball 5 for Chicago. And at least throughout this game, they all played decently well. It was nice to see Ayo get some minutes. A rookie, this was his first time I feel like where he really had extended run and he was able to actually take some shot attempts and get within the flow of the game. And although he missed a bunch of shots, he still played pretty good. Tony Bradley was also, solid for filling in for those non-Vucevic minutes, and, it's nice to have another center on the bench that can offer you some protection in case of foul trouble or something like that. But to me, the most impressive one of those 3 by far was Derrick Jones Jr., who, funny enough, I honestly forgot was even on this roster because he hadn't been playing a whole lot prior to the Patrick Williams injury, but it is again nice to see him a part of an NBA rotation. And I say that because at the end of the day, DJJ is just a really exciting basketball player because 1, he just can play some awesome defense, he's quick, he can leap as we've seen in the past before. But on the offensive side of the ball, he's just so entertaining because he will literally try to dunk anything that's in or around the rim for him, whether it's a pass, missed shot, anything that he catches around the rim, he just tries to throw into the hoop, and it's really, really fun. Because even just this one game, he had a couple of plays where it was either a nice defensive highlight or a big dunk that really energized this team, and that's what this Bulls team is all about. There are a bunch of players that were labeled as overrated in this past offseason. Whole team was pretty much labeled as overrated, by myself included. And so this team has simply just been feeding off of that energy, it seems like, to open up the gates so far. But now that we've had a decent enough sample size in a few games now to really look at what this Chicago Bulls team is, I think it's safe to say that we have a better idea. In the end, with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, these are all guys who are capable of scoring 30 points any given night. They've done it plenty in the past for their respective teams. But now that they're all together, it just allows, again, more of a security blanket for those guys when one of them is having an off night. They know that they actually have teammates that can go out and produce for their, for themselves, for the rest of the team. Plus, this team has also just been really awesome on the defensive side of the ball, which I know was like the #1 red flag about this team during the offseason, but they have done an amazing job on that end. Lonzo Ball has been absolutely awesome in his point of attack role, just getting a bunch of deflections and just being an absolute pest at the top of the key. Zach LaVine hasn't been too bad himself. DeRozan and Vucevic are holding their own, and as though DeRozan's on a bit more of a decline defensively, Vucevic has actually been a pretty average defender so far, which is good for him. The real hole that is very worrisome, at least as of now going forward, is that Patrick Williams was very vital in being that help backline defender to, help out Nikola Vucevic, because Patrick Williams is a really good defender. And now with him out for the season, that could definitely pose a problem for this Bulls team trying to fill his shoes defensively. But again, if they are able to play like they did tonight and get play from Derrick Jones Jr. and Ayo like they did tonight, then I don't think it'll be as big of an issue as some people might take it to be. Because even prior to this Utah Jazz game, the Chicago Bulls were 4th in both opponents' points per games against them and defensive rating, which is awesome to be top 5 in both those categories. So even with the loss of Patrick Williams, if they slide a little bit, as long as they remain around that top 10, maybe like top 12 area in both those categories, that still, in my mind, classifies them as a pretty strong defense. And then one last major key point that I wanted to make about this Bulls team that I simply just found pretty interesting was that also prior to this Jazz game, this Bulls team ranked dead last in 3-pointers attempted throughout their first 5 games for the entire NBA, and yet they were also 1st in 3-point shooting percentage at the same time. Now what that tells me is that there's a small sample size, at least a smaller sample size of them shooting threes compared to the rest of the league. And so because of that fact, I don't entirely believe that their 3-point shooting percentage will stay above 40%, because that's where it's at right now. That is one thing that I'm certainly going to be watching for on this Bulls team as the season goes on, because even though it might not be a huge deal, because even in the Utah Jazz game, they shot 5 of 23 from 3 and still won pretty easily. It's just very rare in today's NBA that we see teams struggle from the 3-point line offensively and then have that lead to them winning a whole bunch of games, or at least even, key games come playoff time or something like that. And yes, I do know that was the case with the Milwaukee Bucks when they won last year. They were barely hitting any threes, especially in the playoff time. They hit a huge slump, but they also had Giannis Antetokounmpo, so I'll raise you that. So again, I'll just reiterate, they're certainly a good team. I still don't know where exactly I see them finishing, but at least as of now, we have a better idea that yes, Lonzo, DeRozan, LaVine, Vucevic, they all are capable of sharing a floor together and playing together and playing well together. The loss of Patrick Williams for the season will definitely hurt, even if not for just this year. It's going to be a big hole for his development, and he's someone who was coming into the NBA needing a lot of development, so that might not be the best case scenario, but as long as he has at least somewhat of a healthy offseason, he should be okay for now. And I guess one last thing that will continue to have an outlook on how exactly this Bulls team will fare is if the bench can continue to play well. Because so far, guys like Alex Caruso, Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr. in this game, they've all been playing really, really well to start this year, but it's not likely that you can rely on bench guys to give you great efforts for every 82 games in the NBA season. But either way, this Bulls team is fun. They play with a lot of energy. They're exciting to watch. They play great defense, at least for now. And I will admit, I was wrong about them coming into the year. And if you've made it to this point in the video, then congratulations, you're a real one. Now, if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about hitting the subscribe button. Should be somewhere in this general direction. Or if you're not sure yet, maybe check out another video which should be in this general direction. Either way, thank you for watching.